Hey everybody, Danny Mott here. Thanks for joining us. This week we had Paul Camancias, who was really wanting to improve his contact with his iron play. What he was finding was he was striking the ground behind the ball a lot. He wasn't really getting that pure strike, that compressed strike that you see with a lot of the top players. You know, the one where you basically strike the ball first every single time and take a slight divot after the golf ball, so you start to set that ball off on a stronger trajectory with more power. What he was finding was he was kind of catching it a bit clean, a little bit thin, sometimes striking the ground behind the ball. He just wasn't making solid contact. In this week's training, we're going to show you exactly what we did to improve his contact. One of the things he was doing is he'd been trying all the things that he'd maybe seen online. He'd been trying to hit down on the golf ball to try and get the ball on the ground, but none of it was working because there is a much simpler way, and we're going to share that way in this week's training. Before we do, if you are new to the channel and this is one of your first videos, consider subscribing. I release content just like this one every single week to try my best to help you improve your game. So, what is a strike? How do you achieve it? What's the difference between the great strikers and then the guys that maybe aren't striking it so good? Let me explain. So, basically, the best ball strikers in the world, or the best strikers at your golf club, have very common things in common. So basically what we're trying to do is this. When they set up, when they're coming through impact, they actually have less loft on the golf club through the impact area. So that's the first thing. So from the setup here through impact, that loft goes down. So the handle now is ahead of the golf ball. There's also a lot of weight on their lead side at the moment of impact, maybe 80-90% on their lead side, and there's a gentle rotation through. So these are the impact conditions of a great strike. They strike the ball, then the ground. That's what's happening. The poorer ball strikers tend to have very little weight on their lead side at impact. They tend to, in a sense, be increasing the loft through impact as opposed to decreasing it because it turns into a bit of a flick. They tend to be weak here. So they're adding loft, which is reducing distance. And because of this, they tend to start to strike the ground a little bit behind the ball, not always taking the divots as well, and thinning, fatting, you name it, they're hitting it. So it's a weak trajectory. The question is, how do you go from that to basically getting a compressed strike? Well, that's what we worked on with Paul. Now, Paul, like I said, had been trying a lot of things. He'd been trying to come down on the golf ball. He'd been trying to keep his hands ahead. But all those things are artificial. There's a much, much more natural way to go about achieving this. Before we do, what we're going to do is we're going to establish exactly where you are striking the ground. So what I would suggest is this is a very simple exercise. So I've got 5 balls lined up here. I'm going to establish where I'm striking it so you can see, hopefully, what a decent ball strike looks like. So I've got a line up here. I'm going to start with this ball here. Let's have a look at where I'm striking this shot. A little bit clean, that one for me, but as you can see, it doesn't matter. The divot here or the grazing of the ground is happening just after the golf ball. Okay, and again, so I'm going to look at this. Again, look at that divot breaking the ground just after the golf ball. Still, there's the line, look, divot starting just after. Slightly better strike, got more into the golf ball on that one. So what we did, so you've got the idea, so get the lines kind of set up. So you kind of, in a sense, you can establish, if you're on turf, roughly where you're hitting it. If you're on kind of a range mat, then you can't obviously kind of put balls down and see where you're hitting it. But what you can do is you can use some foot spray, spray it roughly where the ball would be, okay, to establish, and then look at where you're starting to strike the ground relative to that. What you could do then, which is simple, I didn't work on this with Paul, but it's a great drill to kind of get you striking the ball then the ground, is simply, if you're on turf, try to make marks simply just after the golf ball. So just practice that and really kind of get that sensation of simply getting, in a sense, marks on this side of the golf ball. That would be a simple one to do. If you're on a driving range, you've got your line where the ball would be, then simply spray a line maybe 2 or 3 inches, maybe 2 inches just after the golf ball here, and see if you can take out the second line, not the first. Try that initially, and then basically, in a sense, go into what I did with Paul. Now, that's a simple one. Now, with Paul, I didn't do that. I wanted to do something a little bit more natural. With Paul, he was simply doing, which I see a lot of golfers doing, getting very static over the golf ball. He's been trying very, very hard to improve his game. And what you'll find is if you have a look at this image here, what Paul was doing is through impact area, he was very, very static with the legs. Now, one of the problems is if you want to get on this side of the golf ball, you cannot be static with the legs. You have to be more dynamic. Now, he thought he was to a certain degree, but the problem was he was struggling to feel it. So I gave him an exercise that would help him feel what was necessary for him to get from a static position into a much, much more athletic move through the shot. So let's go through it. So have a look at this position here. He's swinging back, and as he's coming through here, you can see here there's nothing going on. The legs are very quiet here, and then because of that, because the legs get very quiet, his hands and his arms have to pick up the slack, causing very weak flicky style motions. So we need to somehow get his legs working. Watch this. I then got him to start to throw some golf balls, and look at the difference. Look at the difference in their athleticism. And this exists in you too. Every time I do this with players, they are so naturally athletic, they get the correct motion all the time. Have a look at how athletic his legs are now. What does this prove? It means that he does not need to learn what to do. He just needs to learn how to do it. His body, like yours, can already do this. Look at the natural turn through impact. If he was able to put that into his swing, he would start to strike the ball, then the ground, with so much energy, so much power and accuracy. So that is what we did. The way we started to build that up then was saying, look, now first of all, you see it, he now believes that he can really get this going. Then it's a case of trying to transfer this into the swing. What I want you to do is start to make some throwing motions. Get a sense of where your weight is around about this point here. Start to throw. Feelings that were coming out for Paul where it felt much freer. He really felt naturally transferring the weight. He didn't try to put it on there, it was a natural process. What you can do from there is this. You could simply start hitting some golf balls or some swings where you're kind of looking out there and trying to get a feel of this throwing action, feel how it's working. But what we did is this will really help. When you make the throw, just pause for a second, get a feel of where it's going to release from. Then what I want you to do, take your lead arm, as a right hand I'm taking my left arm, and bring it back to your right. Now at this stage you're going to feel where impact position is for you. Not me, it's going to be different for all of us, depending on your level of flexibility. Some people might not be as turned as I am, right? Some of the younger guys in the early 20s are going to be miles further around than me, right? But what we're going to do is we're going to find out where you are. So when you, in a sense, get into your throwing action here, and you move your left arm or your lead arm back here, where are you going to be? Now I've got an idea of what it's supposed to feel like. What I'm doing now is I make a swing and I compare that feeling to what is actually happening for me. And that felt pretty close, if I was being honest. That felt really, really close. So that is what I want you to do. Use your throwing action as your coach. And basically what you want to do is this. Make some motions, because the rotation and the natural motion here will get you forward enough and rotating at the right amount to start to strike that ball, then the ground. For those of you who are trying really hard to strike the ball correctly, you're going to be too static down here, and unfortunately your hands are just trying to do you a favour. They're going to have to be used, you're going to have to flick it, you're going to have to use your arms. So let's have another look at this. I'm basically feeling the rotation and I'm firing through, and that's the other thing that Paul felt. He felt much freer with this motion here. He's not hanging on, he's letting it go. Get ourselves set, imagine that motion there, bring our lead arm back to position, feel where impact's supposed to be, hold it, come back, and then compare this motion to the one that we've just seen. And notice here, I am not trying to strike necessarily at this stage the ground ahead of the golf ball. It's a natural thing that happens with correct motion. Often what happens is when people are trying to strike the ground after the golf ball, they start to do these choppy, aggressive downward strikes, and that is no good for anybody. It doesn't create natural flow. When you look from this side here, when people get static with their legs, they get into this position here and the legs that impact are the hips that impact are way too square. From there, there's just literally no room. So what happens is the wrists have to flick and there's no way of striking really the ground after the golf ball. When you throw, look at the natural rotation you're gonna get. Everyone does it. No matter whether you're 18, 19 years old, right down to your teens, everyone's gonna get somewhat we call disassociation, where disassociation is basically the hips have moved and the shoulders have been held back just a little bit here. Now, obviously, the older you are at times, sometimes the guys who are a little bit older don't have as much rotation as the younger guys, but you will have some. The key is to work out how to feel it for you. And working on the throwing action here naturally transfers your weight automatically and gets you that motion here. You could just hit golf balls, like I say, almost imagine that you are throwing. That's not a problem, trying to almost replicate the throw. But you could also slow it down a little bit more, where what you can do is you can learn it in a sense more gradually. So what you can do is you can learn the feeling of impact, which is this. Use your throwing action. Imagine you're rotating through here, and when you get to your trail arm here, in my case, my right arm, roughly where the impact's going to be, move your lead arm back to it, and that's going to give you an idea of roughly where the impact position is going to be for you. You might not be able to get as far around as me, and I can't get around as far as someone like a Cameron champ, but I've got an idea. Now my job is to kind of, in a sense, compare this motion to one that I've just felt just a few seconds ago. A little bit quick, that one for me. Not quite as good as I'd like, but it's okay, it's gone nice and straight. But what I'm doing now is I've got an idea, I've got a feeling of what I'm after, and I've got something to compare it with. So let's summarize. If you want to start striking the ball, then the ground, what needs to happen? Well, we know the club needs to be de-lofted, we know the handle has to get ahead, and we know our weight now needs to be on our lead foot. Problem is, how do you get there? Well, you need to get there in a more natural way. It's not about trying to chop down on the golf ball, trying to hit the divot. Very few players really are trying to hit the ground after the golf ball. It's a natural phenomenon. The best way to do it, and the way I do it with Paul, was literally show him the throwing action here. Getting this feeling of what he's supposed to be doing here. Look at this, when you try and throw, you don't hang back, you naturally go forward. You also naturally rotate. Learn to kind of, in a sense, allow that to be your coach. From then, what you do, you say, okay, right, now I've got that feeling here of what I need to be doing. All I then do there is get into my impact position here, move my lead arm back here. That's my personal impact position. Okay, right, let's see how close this can be to that motion. If you want to do it in a more flowing way, you could simply just practice throwing here. 1, 2, get yourself set up here, and away you go. That's another way of doing it, because in a sense, it's a sensation of letting go, works at an absolute treat. The stopping and starting, this motion here, where we lean back, it just gives you a little bit more detail and feel around the impact area. I suggest also when you do it, sometimes do it slowly. So when you're making this motion here, feel that, bring your lead arm back, and maybe imagine now swinging at a pace where you can work on it just a bit easier and a bit better. But I hope you find this useful, because this is getting the ball turf strike isn't something you have to really try and do. It's usually it's a natural thing, and the reason why most people don't do it, they get very static with their legs. So this exercise is about waking those legs up again a bit more, but also more importantly, put it into a structure that you can feel how to go about achieving it. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a real popular one. Please share it with as many people as you possibly can, because this is something I see too often at golf clubs, and I want to get rid of it. Of course, if you're enjoying the training and you want to see us next week, click the subscribe button and the bell. But until next week, have a great golfing week.